everybody!
So, it's time for
another What We Read. That's right.
I'm gonna talk about 2 review books. So first we're gonna start with the lowest rated book in this video and one of my biggest disappointments of 2019. The book in question is Into the Crooked Place by Alexandra Christo. She is also the author of To Kill a Kingdom, which I read and loved last year. This is her second novel, and it's also the start of a duology, I think. Into the Crooked Place follows an ensemble cast of characters. They each have their own obvious motivations and things that they want to go after, but really the story essentially centers around them teaming up in order to take down the Kingpin, who basically wants to take over the entire universe. These 4 individuals, there's Wesley, who is an underboss that works for the Kingpin, there's Tavia, who is a busker for magic, Saxony, who is a crafter that can wield magic and create new things, and then Karam, who is supposed to protect crafters like Saxony. And so they team up, they go on sort of a journey to figure out how to get to the Kingpin and how to get rid of him, only to find that not everything is as it seemed. It sounded like a really great premise to me. Unfortunately, the problem with this book, for me, is that the execution felt really flat. It felt very underdeveloped. It felt like it was cobbling together pieces of other stories with very similar plot lines. They were all just getting put together in this book, and for me, it just did not work. I did not care about any of these characters, and I could pretty much see where everything was going to be going. Did not really find the world or the magic particularly interesting. I'm not mad I finished it because I did want to give a fair chance to Alexandra Christo's next novel because I love the first one so much, but unfortunately, this was definitely a disappointment and I will not be continuing the series. But to make up for it, the book I read right after that was actually a delight, and that book is The Bromance Book Club, which is by Lyssa Kay Adams. This book was so fun. The entire premise is that the main character Gavin has been given pretty much the divorce ultimatum by his wife, Thea. There are a lot of reasons for this, but the biggest one that he can't seem to get over is that she has been faking her orgasms for a good part of their married life. His friends are very concerned about this, and they decide to sort of draw him in to be a part of their bromance book club, where they basically use romance novels as their sort of guidelines for how to, you know, better treat their spouses, girlfriends.
In bed.
Not just in bed, in general.
That's terrible.
I know the premise sounds a little out of this world. And it does have that feel too, like it would be perfect in a movie, like a romantic comedy type movie, but it was so much fun. These men genuinely are pulling things that are actual real life things you should think about in any relationship, really. And it's so cool that they're doing it from romance novels. I think that's great.
It's basically like male self-awareness porn.
Yeah, it was so fun. And I didn't realize that this novel was going to alternate between Gavin and his wife Thea. It does, and you kind of get an idea of what they both have been doing incorrectly and what they both want for themselves in the future, and I like that a lot. Obviously, because this is a romance, it plays out exactly the way you think it might, and it was really cute. I just really enjoyed it. I thought it was a whole lot of fun, and I am definitely looking forward to reading book 2, especially now that I know who's in book 2 and who's going to be the main couple. It's going to be so good. So yes, I would highly, highly recommend grabbing this one when it comes out on November 5th.
Alrighty, so before I get into this, I did go on a mini Avatar The Last Airbender kind of graphic novel binge. I read The Lost Adventures, so I have that. I basically, like, Comixology went on sale, I bought absolutely everything. For those of you who don't know what Avatar The Last Airbender is,
you're missing out.
You're totally missing out. It was a Nickelodeon TV show set in a fictional world where people have the ability called bending elements, and the Avatar is said to be this mystical figure who gets reborn generation after generation in each of the single nations that specialize in a specific bending. The Fire Nation, the Air Nomads, the Water Tribes, and the Earth Kingdom. All elemental benders of a certain kind, and he brings balance to the world. Now, it starts with Aang, who was lost for like 100 years in the ice and was refound, and the war that he was supposed to stop happened, and the world is a terrible place now, and it's getting worse, and he alone can save the world. It was a huge, phenomenal hit. And it continued in graphic novel form right after the season finale. And I gotta tell you, it reads like canon. I read the Lost Stories, which is just a bunch of literally random stories that are compiled together. And you know me and how much I love canon, like, so much.
This is like the one show that does it for you because it's all canon.
It's so good, though. There was a lot of absurdity in the Lost Tales, or the Lost Stories, or whatever that was. Well, we'll flash it on the thing. It was cute. It was cute. It's just top to bottom cute. It's like reading a ton of Avatar: The Last Airbender comic strips. And I would recommend it for anybody who's still... As long as
they all show up.
They're all there. They're all there. And it happens within the Avatar: The Last Airbender series timelines.
That's fun.
So within each season, you'll have like these side quests and side stories and whatever it is that they do. So it's pretty funny. And it really does bring Team Avatar like to the forefront. It's great. But what capped off my little binge read, and thanks to Kristen and Andrew for getting us this book. It's the collected edition of Smoke and Shadow. It's like a 3-part thing that they blew up to the size of something that's larger than my face.
The library edition.
There you go, that's what it's called. Of course, I read all of it on my tablet, but of course, you know, there's always this bug crusher. It tells the story of, well, you see there's Zuko and there's Mais, for those of you who still ship that. They visit the situation.
I like the situation.
It's a little situation.
I now realize why Kristen might really love the story, because she does really love Zuko.
Well, there you go. And this is very, very Zuko-centric. It happens right after they figure out what happened to his mother.
Mm-hmm. Which was also a great arc, by the way.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Because that was one of the biggest, like literally the end of the series raised that question. The last episode was like, okay, where's my mom? And it's like, holy crap, yeah, 3 years.
And I never thought about that.
And I never thought of that, but that was an important thing. But now it's like, what, we're going there. And I think it was a lead into that. And so this happens right after that. If you love Avatar The Last Airbender, absolutely do this. If you're new to Avatar The Last Airbender, just go to Amazon like Prime and watch everything. Buy it, take it, do whatever. Best Buy has like sales. And then you read these. If you're not sold on like the first season, then this is not for you. But if you love that, then may you find your way to this and beyond, and it is well worth the effort. So, no spoilers needed for this. It's just kids are getting kidnapped, and in the Fire Nation, and there's a faction that does not like that Prince Zuko is now Fire Lord Zuko.
Look how much he's grown.
And that's the only spoiler I want to give away. And now this is Zuko navigating this thing with his buddy, the Avatar. Finally, I finished book 4 of Keeper of the Lost Cities by Shannon Messenger, called Never Seen. Hard for me to finish because I have, again, you will see this in the next like 8 what rereads. Assuming I don't pick up the pace, because Alexa's gonna have to. Alexa already started. I know Kristen has from Super Space Chick has already, like, she's done with book 2, and you will see this for the next few what rereads. It's hard for me because I'm not supportive of the ship. And I slur that because I understand that it works and that it's really well written and that it's very, very good. This is a preference thing. This is just me going team anything but that. I swear to God, like that's the level. And that's hard for me because I really love this story. I do. It's so good that I forget that they're elves. They subvert so many of the regular elf tropes that you don't even like. Nobody has pointy ears. The food tastes like cheeseburgers, even if it's all not meat. In which case, fine, but that's cheating. But then again, in a world of extreme magic, why shouldn't like these houseplants taste like, you know, steak? Anyway, point is, it's such a well-written yarn. It just keeps escalating. It feels like this could totally go the way of like Grey's Anatomy, where it's like 15 seasons and you just keep going.
Yeah. Because
it's that good. It's absolutely that good. And so I highly recommend picking up the first book. Alexa is now in the first few pages of it, just realizing, hey, the hype is real. And it is real. Like, there's a reason we went all the way to book 9 with this thing. And I absolutely love it. It's just, think about it this way. If I don't like majority of the front row tropes and aspects of it, like elves and this ship, if I'm pushing that aside just to get, like, if I'm drop kicking those major things just to get to the story,
that says something about it.
That says something, and I'm forcing myself because I have to know what happens next. Sophie is growing up to be exactly what every magical shoujo girl trope is doing, is where she becomes this very compelling center of everything, everyone's eventual compass and anchor and rock, even if she herself is unsure of things. And that's what heroes are, and that's what Sophie is turning into.
Ooh, that's such a good way of putting it.
And I love that. I love how it's so gradual. It's so on brand for the middle grade piece of it. Highly recommended. So please. But speaking of heroines.
Oh, speaking of heroines, the series that I'm about to talk about, I could have talked about some of the books already before, but I wanted to wait until I finished the entire trilogy so we could talk about it all in one go.
The first trilogy.
And that is the Kushiel series, the Phaedra Trilogy specifically. Kushiel's Dart, Kushiel's Choice, and Kushiel's Avatar. So Kushiel's Dart we've talked about pretty often on the channel. It's just a story about Phaedra no Delane, who is an Angeset that is also trained to be a spy. She ends up embroiled in this very big conflict within her kingdom that takes her down paths she never would have thought that she'd go down. There's a lot of betrayal, there's also a lot of triumph there. That's what happens there. And then we have Kushiel's Chosen, which is the second book. So this one actually takes place not so long after the events of the first book. Every single event that occurred in the first book, every choice she made, everything that happened, all of it trickles down into this book because the plot sort of continues right where it left off, and you're following Phaedra as she tries to deal with this, considering her brand new circumstances at the end of the other book. Very last book, however, you got a time jump here. There's like a 10-year time jump between the ending of this one and this one. Phaedra finds herself drawn back into the world that she thought she was done with because she has to find answers for things. And I'm going to leave it that vague because it'll be spoilerific for this one. What I love the most about this series is Phaedra herself, because I think she's such a fascinating character.
You bet.
I'm sure a lot of people will hyper focus on the fact that she is an Angusette and
she's a courtesan.
And she's a courtesan, and you know,
all of the BDSM.
We'll get this out of the way. There's a lot of that.
This is fantasy BDSM.
Yeah, it's a lot of mentions of that, whether it's consensual or non-consensual. There are a lot of different terrible situations that obviously trigger warnings for, like rape, assault, slavery, even violence against other people, emotional and physical abuse. All of that crazy stuff obviously happens because this is a time of war and revolution. To give you an explanation, this is why this is happening.
Yeah.
But Phaedra, throughout it all, you see her grow up so much from the first book, because it starts when she's basically a child. And you watch her grow into this adult woman who knows what she is capable of and what she wants and what she is willing to stand and fight for. And it's so deliciously done. Like, it just feels really realistic, because she's never completely 100% like, I'm the heroine and I know what I'm doing and I'm going to be perfect at it. No. Constantly throughout her journey, Phaedra is challenged by new and even bigger stakes and obstacles, and she's always questioning her own self and her path and what she's meant to be doing, and it's great. But not only is Phaedra a great character, the entire cast that surrounds her is
such
so
a great
interesting.
Ensemble cast.
Whether you like them or you dislike them,
in fact,
fascinating.
You will feel a lot.
So, like, there are only very few characters in the series where I just openly think they're villains and that's all they are. Majority of them are actually portrayed in a way where you kind of understand where they're coming from, even if they're doing terrible things.
Super complex.
It's so interesting. And then you throw in the very entertaining plot, because doing spy things.
While being a
quest
courtesan.
Things. And then there's also the war part of it and the political maneuverings. There's so much, and it's so dense, but it's so good. And even if it does take a little time to get through the entire thing, it's so worth every single second you'll spend in it. But the thing I pointed out to Mackie recently, because we discussed our favorite books in the series. Mackie loves the third book the best. Personally, I think the second book is actually the best. I was telling him I find it so interesting, because the first book is entirely Phaedra learning, like, she's sort of like having the baby step process where she's like trying to like figure out exactly where she fits into this like big cog of a machine that is her kingdom, and this whole network that she's now a part of as a spy and a courtesan. And it's fascinating. It's an interesting journey because they take so much and they put it in there. But the important thing you need to remember about the first book is that she's not necessarily in it by choice. She is trained and groomed to be who she is in that first book. And even though like none of it is done without her consent, it doesn't necessarily mean that this is what she would have chosen for herself.
That's right.
Second book, however, it pretty much takes the exact same thing where she has to engage in all of these like secret spy activities and courtesan practices, but this time she's actually choosing for herself. So she is doing this actively knowing that she is walking right into that scenario, and I find it so fascinating because it's a different thing when you are consciously deciding to step into danger for the sake of something you know is right or you know needs to get done. And it's so interesting seeing her go through it. And then in the third book, this is the one that I feel is a bit of a departure because it's like a completely different thing from the first two. She's not doing the exact same thing. She will use all her skills, everything that she's learned over the years, but she's not doing the exact same thing. Clearly I have a lot of feelings because I just...
No, it's great. I learned that, and I thought, all right, I guess I'm going to read the second book again, because that's absolutely correct. Where she starts off like with growing up around what she knew, and how she adjusts into that thing. She engages everything in the second book as the captain of her own fate, and you know, both succeeds and suffers for it, and that's what fascinated Alexa. And I learned that from her perspective. I'm just like, hey, that's kind of a cool assessment of that book. Like, even I have to concede that yes, that is the better character arc by far. I
think it's because for me in the third book, which I don't think I said, is I feel like Phaedra has already reached her...
Yeah, she's peaked.
She's basically at her peak, and she's operating from that place.
Yeah, and when a character has peaked, it's kind of like, you know, Aragorn and Legolas.
You kind of know she's not going to be.
That's the height of it, you know what I mean? Like, they have become so much, so now they're just being set up for the final thing that they're going to do. Like, they're not going to do anything greater than that, which is, you know, like Sauron and the thing. In this case, Phaedra and whatever she had to face, that's it. Like, everything in her life led up to that moment. It was just a matter of just becoming that final... It's almost like an affirmation of, yes, this is your level now.
Yep, pretty much.
Rather than in book 2, where this is her peaking.
Yeah.
And I think that's great, and also pun intended.
Clearly, I was emotionally invested in Phaedra's story, and I really, really enjoyed getting to experience the entire series back to back. I think that was a great idea on my part, because it was just fascinating, and that made it possible for me to see Phaedra really grow through every single novel.
And it's such a lush world as well. It's so well populated, and the lore is just nummy.
It's really good, and I really, really enjoyed it. Also, shout out to my perfect companion. Just
His
saying.
name is Jocelyn.
And he is the best. Obviously, highly recommend checking out this series. Again, be warned with all the trigger warnings I mentioned. Be warned that this also has a lot of sexual content in it because that's just
But not as much as you would think. Like,
yes, not as much as you would think, but it's definitely.
But it's there. It's there. It's not like George R. R. Martin is just this happened, that happened. It's that graphic. We're done.
No, this one is.
Here it lingers a little bit.
Sometimes they talk about it in detail, and sometimes it'll just
happen.
Yeah.
So, but it's in there. But it's not all that it is. In fact, I
actually think the worst of it is in the third book. But
yeah,
that's
like
just my opinion.
Like when a friend literally, and this I intend to pun, pimped this to me. He basically said, "Oh yeah, fantasy BDSM." It's like, okay, Angusav. So I was expecting kind of like a nice porny little read, and I'm like, look at all this court intrigue. What's happening? And yeah, true enough. So it's balanced.
Yep, pretty much. Great story, great characters. Great series. That's the end of this particular What We Read. We hope you enjoyed it. If you have thoughts on any of the books that we talked about, we would love to hear them. And I guess we'll see you guys with another video very soon. Bye!